This is like a script. It's not a game script. It's a script.
Fuck the Oscars, you know? Fuck the Oscars! Fuck you!
Because the most subtle nuances of emotions could be seen on screen. With the PlayStation 4, games have now finally reached that stage.
This is the Citizen Game Podcast, a podcast where we talk about the first game, the very first game that tried to be a movie, as far as I know anyways. I don't know, Dragon's Lair, I guess. Could be that. But you know what I'm saying. Not the same thing. Okay, so we're playing arguably the first sort of prestige game. And what did you think of it, Ryan? What did you think of the legendary Metal Gear Solid 1?
Well, it's interesting, I guess.
It is extremely interesting.
I did not love playing it all the time.
The actual experience of playing it is kind of challenging.
Yeah.
And not just in the typical sense of challenging, although it is hard as balls.
Yeah, it is hard, but it's also just, and maybe this is a function of me, you know, not coming up in that era of gaming, but coming up in a different one. The controls just feel really unintuitive a lot of the time. Like, I think about
okay, so the thing is, though, I would not call any of the controls of any of these games intuitive. I mean, maybe up until MGS5.
It's more like, so there's that whole section where you're running up the circular stairs. They're not circular, but you're running up like the stairs to fight the helicopter. Where you're fighting all these enemies and you have to shoot. Like, shooting does not feel very good.
And it's like, what do you expect? But, you know,
right
in the moment, it's difficult.
At first, I was like, well, that makes sense because this is a stealth game. So it should be hard to fight. But then there are several sections. It kind of isn't a stealth game after a certain point.
That's the big thing I wanted to start with. And I don't, it shouldn't be a hot take. You know what I'm saying? Like, this sounds really contrarian and controversial, but I am definitely not the only person to point out that this really isn't much of a stealth game.
No, especially after like maybe 2 hours.
There are stealth sections and there is a stealth system, but what you do the majority of the time is not sneaking.
It's fighting bosses.
It's so much. It's like you're doing basically playing a visual novel.
I don't think that's true.
I just mean the codec. No, the codec.
Oh, the codec is a visual novel. That's true.
Yeah, you're going from boss fights, visual novels to kind of navigational puzzles, like shoot a rocket into a socket, and you can proceed now. The remote controlled rocket.
Yes. And then you also have, because after the first boss fight, the one against Revolver Ocelot, that becomes the main combat of the game.
Boss fights, you mean?
Yes, because you fight bosses almost as much as you just fight regular. Like, the boss regular enemy ratio is really off.
It's like, if you're skipping cutscenes and know exactly where to go, the boss fights are what take up the majority of your time.
Yeah. Of actual gameplay.
It's both kind of difficult to enjoy now, but also really interesting, because part of the reason that there's barely any stuff is like, this game has so much shit in it. There's so much. like I said, you're switching between like maybe 5 different modes of like visual novels and cutscenes to puzzles to just kind of like boring backtracking to straight up combat to actual stealth sequences.
Yeah, the codec stuff is honestly really bizarre the more you think about it, because you have like entire dramas, like characters who get like development and backstories who never actually appear.
And the thing is like it's because that's cheap, just
Yeah.
audio.
You don't have to animate scenes and stuff, but it's still weird coming at it from like a modern gamer perspective of like, why is like half of the cast of this game never appear?
And it's weird because, well, it's efficient in the sense of, you can do as much. That's like a cheap form of storytelling, but it's inefficient as in you can go as long as you want.
It's
There's really
inefficient.
no
Yeah,
character limit here,
it's inefficient in terms of actual gaming because like
and storytelling, really.
yeah, so much of the story is you looking at two barely animated pictures of the characters just talking.
Yeah, and I think I think I had a pretty similar experience to you. I think I was pretty baffled. I knew there was a lot of shit in this game. But I did think it was going to be slightly more of a stealth game than it was. And that's also basing it off of that I played Metal Gear 1 and 2. I went the whole 9 yards and played the MSX 2D pixel games, which do have more stealth in them. And this isn't a fair comparison at all, but 1998, this is the same year that Thief came out.
Right, which has so much more. I've never played it, but I you've told me about it. It has like a lot more complex stealth gameplay. Right?
It is there's really no comparison in the sense of Thief is a PC game that you can play it now, update the resolution and textures and all that, and there are cutscenes between missions. But then you start a mission, and that is going to be an hour and sometimes a 2 hour long unbroken stretch of stealth gameplay. And that's not even because like that is a relatively niche immersive sim PC game that Metal Gear Solid sold like how many fucking millions of copies?
I don't have the number in front of
like
me.
7 million. I forget which one. I can't remember if it's Metal Gear Solid 2 that sold that many. But Thief, I think it maybe cracked a million. I don't think it cracked a million actually. It's there's just no comparison into the types of
in
game
the US,
it is.
MGS1 sold 1.06 million.
Okay, yeah, it's MGS2 that sold like 7 million. But yeah, and these two games get talked about because it's like stealth games in 1998, and yeah, there's really no comparison as far as like the style. I mean, I would say MGS1 is probably more influential ultimately, just because at least in the games we're talking about, like Uncharted and shit.
Yeah, because there's so many interesting little moments that a lot of the games we've talked about do, where in order to achieve a like quote unquote cinematic effect, it breaks the core gameplay and does something totally different.
Remember the rappelling sequence?
Yeah, which is insane because that is a gameplay mechanic that only exists for that sequence to achieve like a cinematic thing of like rappelling down the building while the helicopter's shooting at you, and it never comes back. Which does result in the game having to stop a lot to teach you how to do new things. Where it's like now you're playing a puzzle where you have this key that has to turn into different forms, so you need to backtrack through the last 3 areas you fought through.
I think overall playing it is still a marvel in the sense of like this came out on the PlayStation 1.
Yeah, the things it's trying to do with the PS1, like in the skeleton of the PS1, is really interesting and kind of impressive. I just don't know if it totally can achieve, and we'll talk about that more when we talk about the story, I guess, but I don't know if it totally can achieve those things.
No, I don't. Yeah, it doesn't. But you can see why
I can see
this
where
was
it's
just a
going.
gigantic deal. Like
Yeah,
at the time.
I can understand why it would blow someone's mind in 1998.
I mean, it's still mind blowing. Just in the sense of like, holy shit, this came out in 1998.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's as far as just the general pacing and gameplay. I think I've said what I want. Well, so let me just ask. Overall, what'd you think of the story?
Overall, the story,
Probably the same thing. It's interesting.
it's interesting. I don't think it quite works as a story. I should say I have not played the first 2 Metal Gear games and did not, but there were so many references in it to them that I understood were references, but did not get actually. And you've told me some of those references are actually retcons.
Specifically, the thing where Big Boss says he's Snake's dad.
Right, which is something Snake just says when he meets Liquid.
Yeah, and it's very much in the vein of like as these sequels go on, they will continue to basically reframe the previous game. Like that's like a thing that will continue to happen in this series. From everything from like more clever things to just really stupid bullshit that will continue to happen.
Right, because the fact that let me ask you a question though. So is there no indication in the first 2 games that that Solid Snake is a clone of Big Boss?
No, there
Nothing
isn't.
indicates that at all.
No.
That was okay. So that's interesting. So that's crazy to do that in the game when Big Boss is already dead.
And it is like, so you're getting the more authentic experience because when this game came out, you could not play those old
So if you were
Metal Gear games.
if
If
you were
you're
an
American,
American,
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Americans who were playing this played it having no idea what they're talking about when they're like, Big Boss said this. I want Big Boss's DNA.
I want Big Boss's DNA.
That is what do you mean?
I know.
You can
know.
laugh,
It's
but
just
that is the demand.
that is a lot of that's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of very silly things said with a
Yes.
straight face.
But yeah, but the Americans were in the situation I was in where I was like, who the fuck is Big Boss? I mean, I know from like talking about it, but like I don't know who that character is. Not a character I met.
No, and he doesn't become a character until he gets his own prequel.
Right. So it's like, yeah, because when could Americans first actually play?
Metal Gear Solid 3. That is when they released.
No. That's when they released in English.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was part of like a bundle, like you got Metal Gear Solid 3 and then came with the first 2 Metal Gears, which had reworked portraits that looked like their characters because Solid Snake was just fucking Kyle Reese and Big Boss was Sean Connery.
I did not know Big Boss was Sean Connery. That's awesome. So that even goes more towards it because like it's not even a thing where they looked like each other. If it's just a shitty photo scan of Sean Connery. Fuck. But like, so it's not even a thing of like, they look like each other. That's why we're doing this.
The only other thing I'll say about like the old Metal Gears is that there is a lot of stuff in Metal Gear 2 like that was done in Metal Gear 2 that people think was done first in Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid is almost kind of a remake. Like there's the stair section, there is the key that changes temperatures, there's like a love interest. The really important stuff as far as like the connection is oh god, what's the cyborg ninja's name?
Gray Fox.
Fuck. Gray Fox, yeah.
Yes, because they do bring that up, and it is kind of explained that they fought together on Zanzibar land.
Yeah, and that is actually a I mean, I wouldn't say I was dramatically invested, but it was actually a well done for an 8-bit computer graphic sad scene where his love interest dies and he gets fucked up, which is interesting.
In Metal Gear 2.
In Metal Gear 2, yeah.
Oh, so if you were the invested fan, like a Japanese invested fan, obviously you could play that.
Yeah, it would.
And, like,
This would be almost a like ending to a trilogy in a weird way.
right, having him die is like the final sacrifice in Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah,
Would
yeah.
be like
I mean,
this
well, he's not in the first
culmination.
Metal Gear game, but no, wait, he is in the first Metal Gear game, but it's not. The Metal Gear 1 is the most like has the least amount of story. It's very simple relative to even Metal Gear 2. But okay, we gotta get away from Metal Gear 1 and 2.
Okay,
That's-
I those are the ones I don't know, so like that's why I'm curious.
Yeah.
about it. But
Yeah.
we could go to Metal Gear. So Metal Gear Solid, it does open very cinematic. With the cutscene where it's like we're intercutting the credits and we've got him in the submarine, the narration over it. That all feels so like Hollywood movie.
Yeah, and it's cool. It's fucking
Yeah,
cool.
it is. It's sick. And then he gets into the base.
Well, did you watch the briefing?
I believe I did. What is the briefing? Remind me again.
It's like
I
a
don't think I
whole
did.
separate. Oh well, it's just a ton of exposition about stuff that like you're probably fine if you skip it, but it's just this game's pacing is a struggle, and I want to talk about something with I I see this sometimes with do you remember I talked about the Gaming Brit show, like talking about God of War?
I think you showed me the video.
Yeah.
of it.
Okay. So I'm not actually like shitting on him because I actually like his videos, but he brings us up specifically when talking about Metal Gear Solid 4. But there is so many breaks in the action. But he prefers that to sections in games where you're forced to just kind of walk around, where you can't skip it. And my point is that it's basically saying it's like, yes, there's lots of cutscenes and audio, but on a second playthrough you can skip it. And I hear that a lot from other people, that all this is fine because it's skippable. And I just want to say that no, like, well, the first playthrough I'm not going to skip it, and it is very challengingly paced, especially
the narrative.
especially the codec calls where there is just no incentive whatsoever to edit. And I just want to start out with that because even from the start, like the very first room, the elevator room, I'm already just like, can we make this just a bit more concise, guys? Or
Oh, the codec, yeah.
And that probably killed a lot of my actual investment more than anything. I mean, not even talking about the actual quality. I suppose we should just fucking talk about, these games were held up as kind of a pinnacle of video game storytelling. You can look at reviews at the time, like IGN's review from 1998, saying most games don't have good stories. This one actually does.
Yeah, I mean we've talked about this before, I believe. Trying to figure out, when did a game having quote unquote a good story stop meaning having a story at all? Because I think I've said this about David Cage games, which is that David Cage is kind of like the artsy whatever game guy. He was at least considered that in like the 2000s, 2010s. But
in retrospect, I guess it was really only Heavy Rain, because I remember Beyond Two Souls not getting.
I mean, no, Beyond Two Souls is when the backlash set in.
Yeah.
But Heavy Rain, at least. Heavy Rain, if it were a movie, would be kind of a trashy thriller. It's not like, it gets held up as like the artistic triumph of gaming. But if its story was the story of a movie, it wouldn't be considered anything special.
And this kind of brings to I still struggle with is Kojima a hack? To put it bluntly.
Dare you? How dare you insult George Miller? How dare you insult George Miller's strongest soldier?
And because this, the Metal Gear has this really weird kind of reputation, which is you have 3-hour long video essays of why Metal Gear Solid 2 is one of the most like crazy, innovative, deep works of the generation.
Right. A
And
game
at
I
the
have
same
not played, to be
time,
clear.
you will have people outright dismiss it. And I mean, even just seeing clips is like, dude, look at this fucking dialogue. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And I was trying to, when I was playing the game, I was trying to understand. I'm like, okay, are these games just fucking stupid? And now after playing it, it's like I understand why it has that mixed reputation, because it is both. There are genuinely interesting ideas at play, but they're translated through some really bafflingly and overwrought dialogue that
Yeah.
nevertheless do depict characters that you will care about and be interested in.
Yeah. I don't think he can be a hack because I think he's too weird. Like,
Absolutely.
I feel
That's
like being a
100%
hack,
true.
being a hack requires you to like not care and just do things that will like draw an audience or make money. And his shit is too obviously based on his personal foibles to for him to be classified as a hack.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not
But
to
I
say it's
don't.
great, but
No, and I was like, but I also was maybe the wrong question. Just like, is he a good writer? And the closest sort of like comparison, and I don't know if this fully works as a comparison, but I kept going through my mind of like, what if Star Wars was released before like Marshall Lucas and other people helped fix it? You know, like Star Wars had a lot of the horrendous writing from that, you know, the prequels would later be known for, like in the first Star Wars.
right. But it was
Does that
edited
make
or
any sense
rewritten
as a
on.
comparison?
No, it totally makes sense because that was edited and rewritten on set by other people, and like turned into a very. Star Wars is still a weird movie, is the thing.
Yeah, that's
just
true. It's
become
hard to
so
remember that.
Yes, it's so influential that the rest of American films like changed to be more like Star Wars. But in the context of 1977, it's a weird fucking movie. And so I feel like I don't know if that's quite true of Metal Gear's. It is true to a degree, but mostly stylistically with Metal Gear Solid, where the fact that it feels like a movie, the fact it has characters we're meant to care about, it has like big twists, it has dialogue, all those things are not as weird now as they were in 1998 because those have become standard in AAA games.
But the edge that keeps this game interesting, I guess you would say, like, I remember a clip of as one of like Dan Olson's older videos where he was talking about Neon Evangelion, you know,
Neon
with
Genesis Evangelion.
Evangelion. He was talking, which there is apparently some influence from that in this game. I don't know. I haven't seen that, but his point was like sometimes pulp is allowed to have more interesting, and I mean, maybe radical's the wrong word, but just maybe just more out there ideas, because as long as you're fulfilling those genre conventions, you know, you're not going to be told you can't do that. So it's allowed to do some really strange things. And so my point being is that Metal Gear Solid is a military action blockbuster movie, but it also has some crazy twists which inevitably end up just leaving Snake as a complete pawn.
Right. That's one of the weirdest elements is the late game. We're just going to skip around, I guess. We don't have to recap it
Yeah.
chronologically, but the late game twist about Fox Die is so interesting to me. Like the fact that your actual mission in this game is just to be for your superiors is just to be a vector for a disease.
Genuinely interesting.
Yeah, genuinely really interesting that basically everything you've done is like bullshit busy work a disease slowly kills off your enemies. And like, I
Yeah,
guess
and
really
really
your only
undercuts your achievements.
yeah, because your only job, I guess, is to stop them from firing a nuke before they all die. But they are all going to die as soon as you enter the base. They are all going to die because you're spreading a disease.
Yeah,
Really
and,
cool
and
idea.
forgive me because like I tried to rewatch a lot of the cutscenes because I played this way earlier than you. So if I mess up any of the details, don't yell at me. But just the fact that the whole thing is like the U.S. government basically wants to just kill everybody and then take the Metal Gear for themselves, right?
I mean, no, the U.S. government owns the Metal Gear. There's no taking it for yourself. They built it.
Or what was the final?
The final twist is so they claim that they're going to nuke the site, like not take Metal Gear, like just blow it all up.
Right.
And then
they did it.
And then they don't, because the colonel is like, actually, it was all the Secretary of Defense, and the president's a good guy, and he's on our side. So no nukes, and also Fox Dies like killed everyone but you and Meryl.
Yeah.
And Ocelot, not Ocelot, Otacon. So you're fine. Which that is very funny to me, because it makes the entire final, like, driving the car out of the base totally pointless, because the nukes aren't coming anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
So even that is like kind of meaningless.
Yeah, and it feels so. And Metal Gear Solid 2 is only going to push further into this sort of like player uselessness. It's only gonna get further into that. I mean, each game has a lot of late game twists that ultimately render you a pawn of greater
powers. Yeah, because
Yeah.
the final twist really is after the credits, when we find out the president isn't really such a good guy who didn't know anything, because he's actually, the third clone of Big Boss.
Right.
Which is we find out in dialogue with Ocelot after the credits.
Yeah.
So that's really, I guess, so even the final twist is that even the happy ending you got out of nowhere wasn't real, because there's even more powers at play, I guess. I have not played 2, so I don't know what those powers are.
I couldn't spoil for them for you if I tried. It would be very hard to summarize.
Yeah. But so yeah, it is interesting that, because that Fox Die element is introduced so late. Like the people dying of heart attacks happens, and you're like, oh my god.
It's all
but
set up.
We don't hear the word Fox Die until like maybe the last hour and a half of the game, when you're doing the key thing to disarm Metal Gear.
Yeah, also known as the worst part of the game.
Yeah, that stuff is really, because you have to keep climbing up Metal Gear.
You do that like 7 times or something.
So many times you have to go down and climb back up Metal Gear. It's very annoying. But that is true of a lot of there's a lot of backtracking, because like you said to me when we were talking about it, the map is actually very small.
Yeah, and it's just a function of like we need to reuse space.
Yeah, so that's because the first big time it happens is when you're fighting Sniper Wolf, and you have to backtrack through essentially the whole game to get a sniper rifle.
Right. Yeah.
And then come back through, but it does kind of highlight how small it is, because backtracking through the entire game, or most of it, doesn't take very long.
And it's worth noting that this was not unremarked upon at the time. I pulled up Jeff Gertzman's review on GameSpot. Jeff Gertzman, the guy who got fired for giving
and made Giant Bomb after he insulted Kane and Lynch.
The legend Jeff Gertzman, honestly.
That's king shit, getting fired for not liking Kane and Lynch.
He basically kind of points out what we're talking about. He says it like very soon after the article starts. It's like, yeah, once you know what to do, the game is like 3 hours long.
Yeah.
Which again, it's always like, when I bring that up, I don't mean to bring it up in the sense of like this game's really lacking content, which is how some people bring it up.
Right, there's fucking content there.
It's just that the pacing is there. You get to a certain point where it's like, can someone please just shut the fuck up and let me walk through a room?
Yeah.
Or if it's not dialogue, it's like, do I have to dick around with this specific thing? Like, I go back to the missile launcher. There's other things where you have to dick around. It's like, can I just have a room with some bad guys to go past, please?
Yeah.
Again, it's always that is the weird sort of. You can't change that though, because again, it's kind of what makes the game interesting. That there's so much in this, you know.
It's swinging for the fences in so many like different weird ways.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess you call it scorched earth. It's like we're making like some real sacrifices in some areas to prop up other things and basically squeeze everything we want to do. And I mean, I genuinely commend the commitment to the torture sequence.
Yeah.
It's like
Having
we're
you
going
have
to
do
make
it
this
3
genuinely unpleasant because it
Yeah,
should
and you
be.
have and the fact that you have to keep doing it until you figure out on your own how to get out.
Yeah.
Because if you take too long to, because I did this, if you take too long to use the ketchup bottle to fake your own death, you do it again.
Right. Yeah, I think I fucked up the first time too. I didn't use the ketchup bottle. I just, if you hide under the bed at a certain time, you can also get out. But it's just there's a lot of games that, well, I think we talk about this with, the Naughty Dog games where they'll shy away with any sort of like mechanical unpleasantness. And there are times and place for that gives your game an edge, so that yes, this torture sequence genuinely feels like you're trapped.
Yeah.
And it, and I think especially that one, it does ride a pretty good balance of it real in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't go on that long, but it goes on long enough to make it feel like an ordeal.
And it's not even actually that hard once you know what you're doing.
No, not at
You
all.
just push the button really fast, but you don't like doing it.
No. So I guess I'm thinking about this because of the Sniper Wolf section, that really difficult sniping section.
Yeah.
Something that gets talked about a lot. Kind of a not really spoiler for future games, but the level of storytelling and detail that will be the time given to these bosses, that will not happen again in the entire series. I'm not saying that the bosses aren't characterized in some sections, but no other game in the series basically commits to the full characterization that each of these bosses gets. I'm just curious of what you thought of that, because each one gets a significant amount of time after you kill them.
Yeah, which is interesting. I think the one I thought was most effective was probably Psycho Mantis, actually.
Yeah, him regretting everything.
Yeah, I like Psycho Mantis's death a lot. Sniper Wolf was weird.
That's the one that everybody talks about because it's the one where Otacon cries.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of just shrugged my shoulders through it, honestly.
Sniper Wolf. Yeah, Sniper Wolf. I don't feel like I was as invested in her character as the game wanted me to be, which is maybe a problem, maybe not. What other?
Vulcan Raven.
Vulcan Raven who gets eaten by his own raven. That's pretty cool, I guess.
And he tells you that, hey, you're gonna live a life of chaos and destruction. You keep going like this, man.
He also tells you that Japanese people and Native American people are basically the same.
That too.
Which also confused me because I was not under the impression that Snake was Japanese.
I definitely I'm mixed on this because again, it's like it's neat. It's neat to have games that actually characterize your bad guys, but at a certain point, I'm like, okay, shut the fuck up and die,
It's
please.
a problem of like they pull that card every time.
Yeah,
Even with Liquid Snake, when he like has his heart attack,
that too. Yeah,
they even give him a big thing, which is like not immediately after the boss fight because you fight him, he falls off, and then he comes back and he chases you. But even he doesn't just like. And I felt like his character, maybe it would have been more effective if he just died.
Hey, as long as we're talking about Liquid Snake, we should point out maybe the earliest example of the bad guy going, "Hey, have you thought about all those NPCs you killed?"
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it gets. I don't think it's extremely deep or anything. In fact, Super Bunny Hop, who has, I mean, what I would consider a lot of like the definitive essays about these games. Even though he didn't even like Spec Ops that much, he kind of compares how Spec Ops does do it better. Or I think he was comparing Metal Gear Solid 2. But anyways, it's still just neat to see it,
Yeah.
that it hadn't been done before.
Yeah, the first time it's clearly a result of thinking about this as a story. It is a story where the main character has to be kind of a casual killer. And so if you approach this as a narrative that should be something, I guess, you bring up. Because we've complained about the Uncharted games, like weird way of doing that, where there are like moments in dialogue where they acknowledge it, but it doesn't.
Uncharted 2, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like Nathan Drake is a character who does that.
No,
Whereas
and that's
it
what makes this
part
hold
of
up
Snake's
better.
character. Yeah, because Snake does feel like kind of a soulless killing machine.
But it's tied into the themes of like, we're all just soldiers and he has that recognition about himself, about what he is, and there's all that dialogue with Meryl about it. Like,
about
listen,
being a soldier.
Being a legend isn't all it's cracked up to be, which it is this combination of like, this is very hammy and silly, but it that weird combination of very hammy and silly things, but then when you finish the game, you talking to me and saying they reference the Gulf War.
Okay, that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the real life political stuff that's in this game, which starts because there's a whole. I think it's when you meet the DARPA chief. He has this whole he's not really the DARPA chief. He's really another character,
the octopus guy,
decoy octopus, who you never meet and who dies.
Oh,
you don't find out he exists.
You find out about him in the briefing. That's like the important bit in the briefing.
Oh, okay. So if I'd watched that, I would have known what decoy octopus was.
Yeah, he would that, and you may have even gone, wait, well, where is this guy? He hasn't shown up yet.
But so when the DARPA chief is like, by the way, nuclear weapons are still super serious because this is 1998, so it's pre 9/11, post Cold War. So he has to like assert that nuclear weapons are still a big deal and still a major threat even after the Cold War, which is interesting. And that's the first time I believe it shows like live action, like real footage of nuclear testing.
Yeah.
Which it does a couple more times. And then I'm trying to think of what other like modern,
the genome soldiers with like specifically with the thing. Oh fuck! I'm spacing on what is the actual chemical that affected like U.S. soldiers?
Okay, so I'm trying to talk about these in order. So the next one I think is
sure thing.
It's actually making Sniper Wolf Kurdish.
Right. Yeah.
Bringing in like the Kurdish, which obviously has been an ongoing thing for a long time, but like deciding to involve like the Kurdish like nationalist movement and stuff in that backstory, which I know now there's like a semi-large Kurdish refugee population in Japan. I don't know if that was true in the 90s, and therefore that might be why Kojima is like the ethnicity he chooses to go with is specifically Kurdish. But it still struck me as kind of weird, especially because like I have to imagine most American players at least had no idea what that is.
Yeah, and it's almost like this aspect of say what you will about Kojima, but you can't say he doesn't read books and has
Yeah.
interests outside of games, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, it's his interest seems to be mostly in movies over games.
Yeah.
But he
But the
definitely
thing
knows
is,
games.
the thing is though, is that people would always joke that, well, why isn't he just make a movie? And actually playing it, so many things, everything from the amount of dialogue to even the aspect of what kind of things can you say, while complying with genre conventions. Like, this could only be a video game, and
Yeah.
all
Like
of his games could only be games,
yeah,
really.
like I know they've been trying to make one for a long time. I believe Oscar Isaac is attached to it now.
Oh my god, who's he playing?
I believe the Snakes.
Oh, but both of them? He's playing Liquid and Solid?
I mean, you would have to have the same actor, right?
Yeah, I
It wouldn't
guess
make
you're
any
right.
sense.
Even though in my brain they don't
Oh no,
look
he's
that
quit Metal
similar.
Gear Solid now. Damn. R.I.P. But yeah, they're still trying to make it a movie, and while watching it, I mean, how? How would you turn this into a movie?
Yeah,
How do you
exactly.
do it? Like, because you've got so much shit with like the bosses. Like, how do you turn it into a movie without just gutting everything interesting out of it?
Yeah, and there's this urge to kind of like use every single aspect of the PlayStation. You talk about the fucking Psycho Mantis fight. That's
Right.
everybody's talked about that. Holding the controller to your arm to heal your gamer hand
Which is
after.
completely ridiculous.
Yeah, but it
So
is like,
funny.
and also the fact that characters constantly say things like, "Hey, check the back of the CD case. Press the select button," while keeping a completely straight face.
The CD case thing is such a troll because there is a CD case you get given in the game, but there's no way to check it. You
Yeah,
have to realize that they mean the literal physical CD case the game was sold in, which they don't tell
yeah.
you, which is so
We,
funny.
it's such like a 1990s like DRM thing.
Yeah, but it is weird, yeah, having characters in dialogue say press press the select button or press the circle button to fire. Like
Yeah,
just
and
having
I
that be
don't.
in dialogue is so weird.
And it feels uncanny, and I question whether it's purposely uncanny in this game, but by Metal Gear Solid 2, it absolutely feels purposely uncanny.
That it feels weird to
Um,
have people in universe saying like referencing the fact you're holding a controller and playing a video game.
yeah.
Well, okay, so I feel like we've gotten off track about the big working in real life news, the Gulf War syndrome,
Yes.
which I so what do they so they say what the going theory at the time was for Gulf War syndrome. Don't yeah they mentioned depleted uranium in the
I'm
game.
gonna
They're
be
like
honest, I barely remember it.
so they mention Gulf War syndrome and they say like well they said it was depleted uranium or exposure to destroyed chemical weapons and stuff. But really it's because we injected them with the soldier genes. And it fucked and it plays a ton of real footage of the Gulf War. Like while they're explaining this, they show a lot of actual Gulf War footage, like news footage in the cutscene.
Yeah.
And it's like yeah, even they even reference I Gulf War babies, which I believe I don't know if that was I believe that was a thing at the time. I don't know if that was ultimately confirmed to be because of Gulf War syndrome. But they say that's also because of the freaking soldier genes. They
Yeah,
just
and
like
what do you feel about that?
I mean, it's insane to do it. Like, I can't think of an equivalent that a video game or a movie even has done. Because
I
that was
think
only like 5 years ago the Gulf War syndrome started to become or not 7 years ago when the Gulf War ended, but like it was super recent thing that people were dealing with.
Yeah, and that's definitely an aspect what I'm talking about, where it's like it feels like he can do this because, well, you've made a polished and you know a military action game that fulfills all the other check boxes that
I
no
mean, I
one's gonna
also
really
think it
care if you
might be because he's in Japan.
that too. Yeah,
Like,
Wait, I
not,
mean
I don't know if an
that's a
American
whole
game could do it.
yeah. Um,
But
I
I'm
think the
just thinking
problem is
about,
that this is ultimately going to escalate into Big Boss infiltrating Guantanamo Bay in the 1980s. That is where we ultimately end up with this real life and Metal Gear bullshit combination.
like, the thing with the Gulf War syndrome, though, is I'm trying to think of what an equivalent would be to doing it now. And the only thing I can think of is
Havana
like
syndrome.
Havana syndrome, but at least that's funny because it's not real.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it's kind of equivalent to putting straight up 9/11 conspiracy stuff in a game in terms of taking a real thing and blaming it on a conspiracy.
Yeah. And people, you know what? No one has, to your point, it's more of a timing thing because no one really has a problem with doing that, years and years later. Like, no one has a problem when it turns out Magneto was trying to save Kennedy
Yes,
by
exactly.
curving the bullet.
Yeah,
Because
no one would
that's,
care about this. No, it's only so shocking because the Gulf War was so recent.
yeah.
That's why, like, if this had been so, because they say, like, what is it, that they are a product of weird experiments from the 70s. The two snakes, Liquid and
Yeah,
Solid.
yeah.
But yeah, the Gulf War stuff is so crazy. Like, I don't know if it's like offensive. I guess it kind of is, to be like this real thing that people are dealing with like right
I mean,
now.
it's too baffling to be offensive.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the thing, and I almost can just like we're struggling to even say anything, and I really do, not just playing the game, but talking about this game with you is like it's like a moment. Like I finally realized this is what Metal Gear is about and why it because despite all of its moment to moment shortcomings when it comes to character dialogue, it's remarkably dense and there's so many and has a plethora of ideas that you just can't help but kind of marvel at that it actually exists.
I'm also thinking about now about the whole. Let's talk about its concept of genetics and how genetics work.
Oh, the recessive and
Yes,
and
because they
uh,
have, because late in the game, basically right before the final fist fight, we find out that the reason Liquid Snake hates you, Solid Snake, is because I got all the recessive genes. And the game seems to assume that recessive means inferior,
yeah.
and dominant means superior, which is a very weird understanding of what like getting all recessive genes would actually be weird, because there are a lot of like recessive genes that are bad, but there are just as many that are neutral or good. Like dominant doesn't mean it's like inherently stronger in like the phenotypical like result of the gene.
Yeah, and it's like I wouldn't normally ding a game on making that sort of mistake, but this game is about fucking genes.
Yeah.
It seems kind of obsessed with them. Like,
Yeah,
did you
so it's
not learn
weird.
that in the book that you read about genes,
Yeah,
Kojima?
but it's also, but in the final twist where
Right.
Solidus, he does so. I don't know if this fixes it, because he says, Revolver Ocelot says that it was that Liquid Snake had been tricked into thinking he was the inferior clone, and that actually Solid was inferior.
It doesn't fix it because I'm pretty sure they still say that it's like actually Solid got the
Solid
recessive
has the
gene.
quote
Yeah.
unquote recessive genes, and
Like it
Liquid
all
has
works
the
at a
dominant gene.
thematic level, but yeah, I mean
Right.
you could just swap out, inferior to superior genes and then the
It would be
story would
fine, but
actually be
like
yeah.
Yeah,
It's just a weird blunder. It's a weird blunder.
Yeah, because it is still pretty clear that Kojima does not know what dominant and recessive mean, and thinks they mean like if you have all dominant genes, you have superpowers.
Or for all we know, maybe the translator didn't understand.
Yeah, it's possible that he was using superior and inferior. I don't know. Maybe there's probably a source you could find on that.
Yeah.
But
do you have anything more you want to say about genes?
So you have the soldier gene is also something I'm fascinated by. In that I don't know if we're supposed to even take that's real, because the genome soldiers all suck, and we've killed tons of them. So that does make me.
Do you read that as just like video game bullshit, or that they genuinely are like
not real?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't. Which I think that's a fair reading too.
That's a fair reading. That's what I'm saying. It's a fair reading that like this genome stuff is totally fake, and these guys are all just normal dudes. Or it could also be because like Solid Snake is the true clone of Big Boss, so of course he's better than they are, because they've only got some of Big Boss's DNA. Well, he's got all of it, or all the recessive genes, or some bullshit. So
yeah, it's tough because this conversation feels so incomplete without Metal Gear Solid 2.
Right, which we'll get to.
Yeah, which gets into, but yeah, a lot of talk about what makes a good soldier
in this game. Yeah,
I mean, and Metal Gear Solid 2 continues that,
right? Because there's a whole thing. I'm trying to remember what's their explanation. So Meryl is a genome soldier, right?
So no, well,
she's not going to be killed by Fox Die, but I think they give a really weird explanation for that.
The problem is that my brain's been overwritten with what happens to her in 4. So it's hard to remember. Like, well, what I remember is that she had psychotherapy to not be attracted to men. That's what I remember.
Right. That is a completely
Okay. Can we talk about women? Can we talk about women? Yeah. Can we talk about feminism?
Video game feminism.
Yes, this game is like insane. In one of the first thing that like made me lose my mind is when you talk to Naomi, and Big Boss is like being really suave, or at least seems to be written as if he's being really suave, but actually sounds like a serial killer.
Yeah.
When he's like, let's have sex. Like,
he flirts with every female character.
Yes.
Which, that in itself, I mean, that's fine, but you know, if there's an aspect that is just, there's no nuance for, oh, this is bad but interesting, or it's kind of dated. The female character writing is just straight up terrible. Bad for the most part.
Yeah, they're all
like, Meryl has her moments with, like, she's important for all the thematic stuff on like wanting to be a soldier and everything. But then they'll just start talking about her butt wiggling.
Yes,
and also that Snake shoves his cigarettes in his ass, and she shoves something else in her pussy.
Yes. And then there's like the first time you meet Meryl, Snake the camera zooms in on her ass, but her ass is a polygon. It's a PS1 character, so it's not sexy at all because she's a fucking PS1 character. That is a running problem in the game, that every time something dramatic or cinematic happens, it is happening to PS1 characters.
Yeah, so but that almost, to me, is just charming at a certain point. But
trying to sexualize a PS1 character comes off as like psychotic.
Yeah, having little dramas where when sad PS1 characters are dying is cute. Trying to legitimately sexualize a PS1 character is disturbing.
Yes, like zooming, the zooming out her ass thing is so weird because it's like it's a signifier of sexiness taken from movies, but it completely fails because it's not a real woman; it's a fucking PS1 character. So like, there's no actual sex appeal to a polygonal character. It makes it genuine. That shot like breaks my brain, kind of. because it's so weirdly layered with bullshit. But yeah, like the weird. Also, like I'm pretty sure Meryl's significantly younger than Snake is.
Oh, she's
Based
18.
on
She
yeah.
is 18. And
Yeah.
from assuming how they talk, I'm sure that you can find out his actual age, but a past his prime soldier, I don't know, 30 something maybe,
He's born in
right?
the 70s, and it's 1998.
Yeah, okay.
So he was born. So he's pushing 40 or in his mid 30s.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not great.
And then just how there's just some I'm struggling to remember specific lines, but maybe also it's fine that Snake is a flirt, but how women actually respond to
No,
him.
that was the thing that was insane about him talking to Naomi.
Yeah,
Because she
which her
seems
stuff
like
with
into
the
it.
revenge is actually good,
Right?
But
because then I guess luckily that aspect of their relationship is not in the rest of their dialogue.
Yeah.
Like, so it's weird that the first thing he talks to her about is having sex with her, and then it doesn't come up again.
The most baffling thing is that this is kind of, well, no, it would be wrong to say that it gets worse. Because Metal Gear Solid 2 is mostly fine. Like it has less weird female character stuff. Metal Gear Solid 3 actually has legitimately good female characters. And 4 is where it goes off the rails, which is funny because it has some of the same characters, including Naomi. And then of course everybody knows about fucking Quiet.
Yeah.
Even if you haven't played MGS5, you know about Quiet.
Your words and deeds, etc.
Yeah. But it's not good. I don't know what else to say. It's not good, folks.
I mean, I think even like what other female characters in the game? Mei Ling, who's barely a character.
Yeah, that she just giggles when you flirt with her,
Yeah, and then Sniper Wolf, who I do feel like is given a level of undue sympathy because she's a sexy woman. That makes sense. Like
she says a lot of shit. Just the way the women themselves talk, it's like, did you know that a lot of the greatest killers are? It's like every piece of dialogue that, like, when women talk, they have to talk about that. That's it. Yeah,
it's the fact that every woman in the game is like at least is significantly defined by being a woman.
Yeah, it's not something that could not go.
Yeah, you have to talk about the fact that you're a woman because that's like really notable. Which
could be fine in certain contexts, but obviously a lot of it is just. Listen, maybe this is slanderous because I can't remember the specific line, but I swear there's like some parts of like, oh, I can't. My woman emotions have gotten in the way and caused problems.
Yeah, and then I mean Meryl's insane thing about doing a psychotherapy to not be attracted to men,
which I don't know if that's a joke, because spoiler for 4, she has a romance with.
I mean, she has a romance in this game.
That too. So
it's like I don't. That aspect never comes up again, and it's like it's also weird. Like, does that imply that every Genome Soldier has done that, or is it just because women have a problem with that? Because that's never brought up about all the male Genome Soldiers.
So here's something: why is her dad her uncle? Why did he? Why was that a plot point that had to be?
What do you mean?
I legitimately can't remember why the Colonel lies about being her uncle when he's actually her dad. I cannot remember why that was important.
I don't.
I guess he fucked his brother's wife. That's the only implication I could think about. That would be wrong. Fucking. See, that's the problem. There's a lot of random ass bullshit.
I don't really know why. I genuinely don't know why it would matter him being her dad versus.
Hey, we haven't talked about Otacon.
He's I think it's weird because I was under the impression he was a really important character, and he kind of is in this game, but also kind of not.
Yeah, and he definitely becomes more important later in the series.
He has his moment with Sniper Wolf, and he helps you out throughout the game, but like the Sniper Wolf thing is really his only development ever.
Well, his whole thing is he basically has the soy Oppenheimer moment where he's like, what have I done? Why did I
Yeah.
do this?
I mean, doesn't he say his grandfather helped
Yes,
was one
his
of Oppenheimer's
grandfather-
people?
Yes.
Like he
That
helped
is
build the atomic
true.
bomb. So
And I believe his actual dad will be revealed to have done some bullshit in later games. I don't know.
I
didn't
believe
play
he's a major
5.
character in Peace Walker and 5.
Yeah.
Which you played neither of those?
No, I finished 4 in the next ones are Peace Walker and 5.
Yeah, so my understanding is that in those, he's like a huge piece of shit and a major character in 5 and Peace Walker.
Yeah.
But here he's kind of like, I know in the bad, quote unquote bad ending, he's like vaguely gay with Snake.
Yeah, it's just I know he himself as a character is supposed to be cringe.
Yes.
Because his name is literally Otacon. But I don't know. You're getting to levels of cringe where I really just want to skip some of these sections.
It becomes hard for me to take him seriously as like
when he
wow,
cries,
yeah.
so Otacon will be sad about other characters' deaths in later games, and these are moments that the game is reaching for some legitimate pathos, and it falls flat for me every single time. And I think part of that is just Otacon is like annoying. I mean, part of it is that each character that dies that he's sad about each one is very much like Sniper Wolf in the sense that they're built up very quickly, and it's like, hey guys, like I don't actually care about this character dying. Like the work has not been put in. Which is funny because later characters will have a more meaningful established relationship to him than Sniper Wolf, but the effect will still be the same.
Yeah, I can't really give a shit about him. It's funny that like he stays behind to sacrifice himself, but then doesn't because the nuke just gets called off.
I'm overall just left with there's a lot of stuff to think about, but a lot of the emotional beats ultimately just don't work. So when you're actually playing it's not as the actual game and emotions you're feeling aren't as effective as the ideas that it's putting into your brain, which will be true for the second game as well, in my opinion. Also, I mean, we only touched on this briefly, but like, goddamn, this game is hard. And none of the other games in the series will be this hard.
So it's
And
hard.
that stop and start that is detrimental to the pacing of the game, is what I was getting at.
Yeah, the difficulty is really frustrating because so much of it feels like you're fighting like the way the game is built. Like the way the camera works, the way the shooting works, feels like it adds a level of difficulty to the game.
Yeah, bullshit trap doors that don't need to be there.
Yeah, I don't even get because they're not even that hard to avoid, so I don't even know why they exist.
They were in the old Metal Gear games, interestingly enough.
Yeah, were they better there?
I guess they're better in the sense that they're more predictable. I don't know. It's weird because it's a different sort of 8-bit challenge. The boss fights themselves, we didn't really talk about actually playing them, which they oscillate between being neat to being annoying, which Gray Fox is both neat and annoying. like the fact that you have to disarm yourself.
Yeah, I actually
Um,
really like the Gray Fox boss fight.
I did you struggle with it? Because for some reason that one whipped my ass. I don't know.
No, that was not even one of the harder ones, really.
I think I was definitely missing like a pattern or something in his
The
fighting.
one that annoyed me the most was, I think it's Sniper Wolf annoyed me the most. I hate
Oh
it.
yeah, that
I
no,
hate it.
I think it is inarguably the worst one because you have to snipe with the controls, which goes back to what you're saying about I'm not fighting Sniper Wolf, I'm fighting this old ass game.
Yeah, that's what I was like. I'm fighting the fact that this is built on a control scheme that has like gone out of fashion completely for good reasons because it's fucking annoying. I will say about the boss fights, I do like that all of them try to shake up the formula in different ways.
They are each unique.
Yeah, like it is not just a big enemy that you fight using the same things you use. Mainly because the combat system is so bad that like that wouldn't work.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that started with Metal Gear 2, where like the first game was very much like you're shooting at helicopters and things, and then the second one, there's a guy who's like, I'm the grenade man, I throw grenades. You must fight me in a specific way. And I mean, Vulcan Raven might be the best designed fight because
Yeah.
are using the stealth
Because
system.
yeah, that's the only one where it like goes back to being kind of a stealth game where you have to like hit him with stuff without him seeing you,
Yeah.
which is
I
cool.
think- No, it's neat. It's just there's not much to say about it. It's just like the rest of the game. The stuff that's fine has still aged because it's a PS1 game. And probably aged worse than something like the first Silent Hill because it's not trying to be a slow-paced survival horror. It is trying to be an action blockbuster game, which now we more clearly understand how you do something like this,
Yeah.
or at least in the generic sense.
Yeah, there's like a formula for these things now and how they should play, specifically how they should play. And this doesn't follow it because it kind of predates it.
I think, there's not really a whole lot of specific things I've got left to say, but like I said, I was glad to finally play it because I found the overall reputation of the series kind of baffling, and I think that just kind of goes back to the game itself has a lot of bizarre, weirdly balanced elements. You have barely a stealth game, but also crazy boss fights, and then it oscillates from legitimately interesting ideas to intersecting those with real world politics and maybe really ungraceful ways. Kojima is truly like a unique mind. You can't say he's a great writer, but he certainly got some interesting ideas.
Yeah.
And it's glad to finally understand that now after not fucking understanding.
Yeah,
what
this
the
is also
series
my
was about.
first. This is my first ever Kojima game, so like, it is a strange experience, I guess.
And it's one of a kind. You still can't really get, while the formula for a more story-based action stealth adventure game has been cemented. It's like there's really nothing to give you this specific experience, and that will remain true for like the sequels as well.
Well, I look forward because I do have on my PS5. I have my copy of MGS 2, so I look forward to playing that.
Hey,
on
and
the
you know
next
what?
episode.
Out of all the, no matter what you'll think of MGS2, there will be more stealth, and I think that's a plus.
All right.
All right, let's wrap it up.
I don't know if that's a plus. I'm bad at stealth.